All right, here's a question. Find the length of the missing side of the triangle. All right, we're given this right-angled triangle, and we have one side is 208 meters, the other side is 306. So the missing side is this side. Okay, this is the longest side of the right-angled triangle. Okay, as we saw in the notes, I'm going to call this side A and this side B. They're the two perpendicular sides. They're called the legs of the right-angled triangle. The other side, it's the longest side and it's opposite the right angle. It's called the hypotenuse. I think I called it the hippopotamus a lot in the other video. Okay, so this is the hypotenuse, and that's the side that we're trying to find. Okay, just before we go there, a little bit about this program. It's a lot like the area program. If you click on this button, it's the rotating button, so you can click on the shape and rotate it. Rotates about this little point on the screen. Or you could use the arrow keys. You could click on the arrow keys on the screen if you're on an iPad, okay, or if you're on a computer. This is the dilatation button. You can drag it away from the plus or towards the plus, and it shrinks towards the plus. It gets bigger away from it, so you can make things bigger. You can rotate them. If you turn both these buttons off, then you can move it around. You can drag it to wherever you want. Okay. Often people like to use the rotating button so that the base and height are perpendicular like that. So the base is horizontal and the height is kind of vertical. And of course, if you turn it this way, then the 208 becomes the base and the height is 306. Okay, that's how the program works. And now let's go and figure out this question. Okay, so we need to find the hypotenuse given the two legs A and B. All right, just a recap of the notes that we know so far. This is a right-angled triangle. Okay, the smallest side we called A, the medium side we call B, and the A and B are perpendicular. Okay, and this side is angle is right-angled, and so this side C is the hypotenuse. Okay, C is always the hypotenuse. A and B are always the legs. Okay, now there was this guy named Pythagoras, and he found this interesting thing that if you made squares out of the sides, that the two smaller squares add up to give you the bigger square. Okay, so it looked kind of like this. So if you took the a squared and the b squared, put them together, you got the c squared. Okay, and from that, more modern day mathematicians like you and I have this equation: a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, this is Pythagoras' theorem, or Pythagoras' equation, that we're going to use to solve for the missing sides of the triangles that we're given. Okay, so here's our question. We have one side is 208 meters, the other side is 306 meters, and these are the two legs. Okay, so they're A and B. I always call the smaller one A and the longer one B, but really it doesn't matter. You can call that one B, you can call that one A. It doesn't really matter as long as you don't call the hypotenuse A. Okay, the hypotenuse is always C, always C. Okay, so we want to find C, so we're going to use Pythagoras' theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. The A value is 208, so we're going to replace the A with 208, replace the B with 306, and solve this equation for C, and that's it. Okay, so we have 208 squared plus 306 squared is equal to C squared. Okay, you take your handy dandy calculator and you figure out what 208 squared is. So 208 squared. Okay, it's this big number, 43,264. Okay, and then I'm going to add that to 306 squared. So 306 squared, and that gives me 93,636. Okay, that is going to be equal to 136,900, and that's your c squared. Okay, so that's your next step in the equation. All right, so now we know what c squared is. We want to find out what c is. So we're going to take the square root of both sides. Okay, so I square root the c squared, I get c. I square root the 136,900, and we get 370. Okay, and notice that kind of makes sense. If this is 306 and this is 208, yeah, that makes sense that it's going to be longer than the 306. Okay, quite a bit longer, so 370. Totally makes sense. All right, back into our program. And 370. Okay, don't forget the units. And this is in meters, so 370 space m. There you go. Yay! Okay, and that's how you find the missing side of a triangle, well, in this case, the hypotenuse, using Pythagoras' theorem. Have a good day.